we are looking at outdated ways of teaching, and we're not really addressing the human element of education and learning. And it's not until we take ownership of that, which is something I decided to do, that we will really start to see the difference. So I would encourage everyone to really reflect and interrogate what we're doing within our craft, even outside of education, because this applies to any system right now, especially considering everything that's going on. It's time to interrogate and question the way things have or have not been working for centuries and figure out better ways to do it.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Hi, everyone. I'm back. So I first want to thank you all for the support and feedback for our Men Who Lead series. I was inspired by all the men and their stories, and a special shout out to Aquaus for being such an amazing guest host. As you've heard me mention, this is the very first time that we've ever had someone guest host the show, but it definitely won't be the last time. So today is another special episode because I'm getting the chance to speak with Aquaus about the amazing things he's working on in the community as an educator, and also see how it was for him hosting this series. During this conversation, we're diving into the power of representation in education, especially for Black men, and also we're going deep on understanding the different learning styles of your audience. So let's get into it. So, Aquaus, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast. This is going to be such a great episode. So, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So today is very special because you've actually done something that has never been done on the Black to Business Podcast, and you actually co-hosted our Men Who Lead series, and then you actually were the first to host our Men Who Lead panel in partnership with Verizon in 2017. So we go way back, and I kind of want to talk about how that was for you, but then also some of the things that you're doing in the community.
Sure, absolutely. Sounds good.
So first thing was, for the people who are not yet familiar with you, if you could just tell a little bit about yourself, and we'll get into that more as we talk a little bit more.
Sure. So to keep things simple, as Monique mentioned, my name is Aquaus, full name Aquaus Kelley, originally from Staten Island, New York, currently live in New Brunswick, New Jersey, Rutgers University graduate, background in communication, media, and music. And currently I'm a 5th grade teacher here in New Brunswick. And we will get into that in regards to the specifics of my role in education. But to keep things kind of high level, I believe in being purpose-driven, mission-driven in an effort to have impact. So what I consider to be my social mission essentially is to help build brands, build platforms, empower communities, and uplift humanity.
Love it. And I think it's important for us to talk about why we're having this conversation today. And I actually wanted you to host the Men Who Lead series because, like I mentioned before, you hosted the panel. And I want to kind of talk about, like, how was that for you and what was that experience like? And, what do you think about, interviewing those amazing guys?
Yeah. So, I mean, as you mentioned, me and you go back to, we had this conversation, I believe 2015, September.
Yes.
2015.
Tell the people how we met.
Yeah, her agenda event. And I think I had my camera at the time. I was shooting for Behind the Hustle, shooting and writing for Behind the Hustle. That's how we met. You were doing Black to Business, getting things up off the ground. And that's how we connected. And since then, I think we may have ran into one another at other events as well. And you've invited me out to events. I've shared events with you, and we just stayed in touch in regards to just that community of people who are looking to build something significant that has an impact on other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So how was the Men Who Lead series, leading that, and how was those conversations?
So the first episode was with Darius Quarles. Shout out to Darius, DQ. And we both actually knew of one another before you even set things up. So when I saw things on my calendar, I'm like, oh, snap, it's Darius. So we knew each other since 2016. We met at a Black men's conference in Brooklyn. So again, there's going to be a theme here in regards to connection, right?
Yeah.
Because when we look at Black to business, when we look at the community that both me and you are involved in when it comes to entrepreneurship, creativity, media, etc., it's all about identifying our interests first. And then through that, eventually we have connected with people who share that same energy and synergy for whatever it is that we're doing. And I believe that's very important for our community, our audience, those who are listening in today to understand is it really starts with us. And another theme is self-awareness. Even in my conversation with Darius, with Phil, with Jeff, with Damon, is it starts with us, right? We talk about mental wellness, mental fitness, mental health, and there are actually 7 dimensions of health that include the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, etc. And it's very important that we make the time and create the space to learn about who we are and figure out who we are, what makes us tick. Because once we do that, that's how we can better navigate the world and spaces around us to essentially move closer to our goals and dreams and visions. So, in all 4 episodes, we kind of touched on what was just mentioned in regards to managing our time, managing our energy, managing our vision when it comes to being Black men who lead.
Yes. And I think like what you're saying is so great because of the connection. And I think, like you said, it's because we want this, we want our community to win. And I think for me, it was important for me. I'm inspired by Black men who are leading our communities. I think it's a very thing that we really need to promote because society shows us, I'm a woman, so I know that the mission is, of course, putting these resources together for women. They're out there, but I don't see a lot of these resources for men. And when I look back and see when we did the Men Who Lead panel, I think it was important for me to recognize that there was an issue in our community. But as a woman, I can't speak on behalf of a Black man. So I think it's important for Black men to connect, but also to see that there are resources out here that sometimes Black men just have to show up. And, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can't speak for Black men. I can't speak for Black women, but what we can do is support one another, which is exactly what we're doing now and what we've been doing, right?
Yep.
Over the span of 6+ years is supporting one another, where you do something, I show up, support, listen, and do whatever I can do to help to see your success. And likewise, with you providing me the opportunity to host and moderate, that came through reaching out and saying, hey, I'm open to any opportunities as it pertains to moderating events.
Yes. And it's like, I have an idea and I'm like, Aquaus, would you? And he's always down. He's down to help. So I think that's great for people to see. But in order for growth of our community, we need more of this. So talking about men who are leading in the community. Like I said before, I can't speak as a Black man, but why do you feel like the conversation amongst Black men and like the community matters?
It matters because of our perspective, right? When I say perspective, I think of Julian Mitchell, because he's spoken a lot about perspective and how our perspective and worldview matters as Black men, Black women, people of color, because of how we navigate the world, right? Culture, what we bring to the table, our purview. And this is a conversation that's happening in many spaces, every single space, what we bring to the space. Look at what AOC is bringing to being a legislator, right? Being an elected official. It's just another type of taste, like literally from how we think, what we wear, how we show up, and just what we bring to the table. And I feel that really establishes more of a connection, right? If we can walk into the room and talk about one thing and then talk about another, from, again, fashion to sneakers to finance and economics, right? And history, that's true diversity. That for me is like the essence of diversity, because it's diversity of mind and experience and intellect that really matters for me, right? So I would say that's why it's so important.
Yeah. And I just think about when you and Phil were talking, and he mentioned that some of the spaces he's created for Black men, and sometimes they'll come into the space. You have all these different Black men who come into the space, and sometimes how they communicate with one another, like the issues that they're having at home or in work or in the community. It may seem like they're coming off like this certain type of person, but it's just how they communicate, because sometimes people don't know how to articulate what they're feeling. And it's important for us to have these safe spaces, particularly for these different groups of people. So that was wonderful to hear you all talk about that from that conversation.
Absolutely.
And another thing you and Darius spoke about is family and the importance of putting, making time for family. And whether it be if you have a partner or you have those family and friends that you spend a lot of time with, I think a lot of things we're seeing today is not mostly, but we know that Black men are seen as the head of the household. And what do you think will continue to happen or need to continue to happen for that image to be there and Black men to feel that they haven't lost their place as the head of the household?
Just narrative, continuously questioning and addressing the narrative and story as it pertains to our presence being seen. It's hard to really address that issue when we are viewed a certain way in a certain light. But the more that we can and will put ourselves in positions to be seen as a father, as a loving mate and partner and husband, as someone who loves their community, and someone who just shows up fully in their skin, the narrative shifts. I mean, a lot, and I'm doing a lot of work as it pertains to anti-racism, right? Institutional racism, structural racism, the history of race, the history of slavery, and really just digging deep on that kind of stuff. And since I'm at my computer right now,
let's talk about it.
Yeah, I'll share some notes. Like when we look at race, when we examine race, and these thoughts are going to come from an author, a scholar, professor, Ibram X. Kendi. He has a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And in this book, he speaks about how definitions are important, defining key terms. So when we look at racist and define racist, I'm going to give a definition right now, and it may vary, right? But this is based on my experience thus far. So if we look at racist as supporting the systemic creation of false hierarchies and false narratives of human value, right? So I'm going to say that again. Supporting the systemic creation of false hierarchies and false narratives of human value. A lot of what we know to date when it comes to government, society, is really based on the creation of false hierarchies and narratives of human value. When we look at race, when we look at Blacks, Latinos, Asians, it's all socially constructed. So to be racist essentially means to support the socially constructed creation of false hierarchies and false narratives, right?
Mm.
So if we look at anti-racist, what does it mean to be anti-racist now? Being anti-racist means to confront, be active in confronting the systemic creation of, again, false hierarchies and false narratives of human value. So to be anti-racist doesn't mean to not be racist. It means literally to confront what is happening in the world today and being active. And then we go a step further when we look at white supremacy, right? What does that mean? Essentially, that would mean that okay, if being racist is to support the creation of these false hierarchies, and anti-racist is confronting the creation of false hierarchies, then it makes sense that white supremacy is essentially to uphold and uplift the creation of false hierarchies and false narratives. So,
let's just drop a mic to that, because you just broke that down. It's like, oh, okay, and I like it because it was digestible, and that's the type of conversation we like to have.
Absolutely, and again, like I'm still studying, I'm digging deep, but right. I want to. And this is going to go into education. So me as an educator, I'm learning more about myself in regards to digesting massive amounts of information so that I can then synthesize that information and process it in my own way to then recreate that information in a way that is simple for other people to understand. Right.
So necessary.
So that's my view as an educator and why I spend so much time and energy into the work that I do, because I feel it's important, as you said just now, necessary, so that I can then take high level stuff and be able to communicate it and share it with people in my community, people in our community, so that we can all gain a better understanding of how to create change.
Love it. And you know, that makes me think about another thing that you and Phil talked about is, you know, you all talked about social media and people getting on social media and promoting on social media, but he had this angle of, I think it was like Cal Newport, who does deep work in digital minimalism, talking about how, you know, getting away from social media. But what resonated with me is when you all talked about people don't want to think critically. It just takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy to form an opinion, and people don't want to do the work. So therefore, sometimes when you read books, you do take on the opinion of that author if you haven't, you know, gathered from different places to reach a different conclusion.
Yeah.
So I think what you're doing is great because it's one, digestible, but it's also like breaking it down for people to be able to understand and form their own, you know, what they've learned.
You hit it. Like you literally hit it. Like you have identified my exact approach, because when I go in, I'm going in on books from different authors. I'm going in on journal articles. I'm going in on YouTube videos so that I'm able to see varying views on a similar topic. And that also helps to enhance our language, right? So right now I'm looking at the word uplift, which can be synonymous with uphold in a way. So a lot of times I'm figuring out, okay, what word, what language should I use? How should I use it? I'm looking at the sources to figure out what's the best verbiage. And when I listen to people speak on YouTube, I'm listening to the language that they use. This is how I, over the years, have helped to enhance my vocabulary, just listening to anything from music interviews to people, politicians speaking about certain issues and challenges in the community, right? So just, again, this goes back to diversity, just going across the board and just following my interests, right? And that's really what allows me to be in a position to sit in different rooms and talk about different things that, again, align with my interests.
Love it. And I was thinking about this when you said that this article I had read on Medium by this, I forget what the name of the writer was, but he was talking about also how to, and I'm sure you can understand as an educator, but how we have to effectively, like learn to read effectively, because we were taught in school how to memorize and we weren't taught really how to learn and just get together what we're reading so that we can make these opinions. So I think that that's another important topic for people to think about is how do we learn? Do we just read just to read, or are we reading to retain the information?
Yeah, I mean, so essentially, and I'm looking at my deck now, I created a academic student success guide. So I address that in regards to the purpose, what I believe is the purpose of education, which is to learn how to comprehend, understand, and process information. Because when we can do that, that allows us to access and create opportunities to enhance our quality of life through applying the information that we learn, right? So that's how I view the purpose of education. And it comes in different ways when we look at fundamental learning skills. Listening, observing, reading, writing, thinking, numeracy, speaking. That's how I look at it. And when we can grasp all of these skills, I may be missing some, but when we can grasp the art of listening, right? I'm going to just throw the art into it. The art of listening, the art of observing, the art of reading, the art of writing, the art of thinking, the art of numeracy, the art of speaking. That's when we become very dangerous.
Yes. So this is about, now we're talking about, so people who are listening know, leading through education and what you're doing. So because I want to go into that, let's backtrack a little bit and tell people, what are some of the things that you're doing? And I guess I want to talk about what inspired you to become an educator first, because I know that leads into why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah.
So I learned how to fall in love with the challenge of teaching. Teaching is extremely demanding. My first 2 years, I struggled with teaching because I never aspired to become a teacher. When I was younger, I wanted to become everything except a teacher. I went to phrases. I wanted to become a construction worker, architect, football player, musician, etc., producer. And my first experience within the realm of education was when I joined an AmeriCorps program called City Air Miami to be exact. And I moved out to Miami to serve as a Corps member. I worked at Miami Edison Senior High School with ninth graders, and I was what we call an interventionist. So I was in the classroom with the teacher, helping to support the teacher in a ninth grade Algebra 1 class. And this is in Little Haiti in Miami. My time in Miami was, anyone who knows me knows that it was to date the most rewarding experience that I've been involved in. Not because I worked in a classroom or a school, though. It was more so the community as a whole, because what I really appreciated was not only working in schools, because working in schools is a great way to get to know your community, right? Because you're literally seeing all of the students who live in that community, right? When we go into a school, it's literally a concentrated look at the community, because those students are children of people who live in that particular area of a city. So, that's how I look at it. And then outside of school, after school, we did tutoring. Outside of school, we did murals and beautification projects and volunteer work on Saturdays and Sundays. So I was literally all in, right? And that exposed me to the power of community and connection, and how through that we can leverage our skills and talents to really do meaningful things. I mean, again, at the time I was shooting, so I had my camera, I would shoot at galas and events and have a bunch of photos, and it was just full circle, right? When I returned from Miami and kind of re-strategized and came back here to Jersey, my sister and mother encouraged me to start substitute teaching, because I wasn't doing anything else that can provide me with a income, right? A sustainable income. So I'm like, all right, I'll go for it. I did it, and I still wasn't convinced to be a teacher, but I did enjoy being around kids, students, right? Mm-hmm. And at the time when I came back here to Jersey, my first assignment was in-school suspension. So I was at middle school. So, and just being in that environment and being around young people, it really reminded me of a younger version of myself. And
I bet.
This speaks to the presence of having Black men in school.
Yes.
Right? Because we are able to connect with those we see as if we are just connecting with our older selves, like talking about, again, sneakers, fashion, rocking Jordans, and just being fly and dressing nice. That's what I did in junior high school, right? That's what I still do, honestly. Like, right. And I'm just literally, on the flip side, I'm an older version of them. So I'm looking at them like, yo, they're a younger version of me. They're looking at me like, yo, he's an older version of me. And that is where the role model comes into play. Like, yo, you can still be dope and get things done and pay your bills and be nice to people and graduate high school and go to college and do everything you're doing now. You can still do that. So just showing younger people that it's possible to do what you're doing now, yet stay focused and elevate and ascend to do things that you want to do in the future, right? So I think for Black men, we have the ability to show the younger generations that, yo, it's possible to be fly and get things done and make the world a better place. That's how I see it.
And they don't feel, and I think that's important, because when you have that approach, people don't, especially kids, they don't feel like you're out of touch with them and their experiences, or that you don't understand their experiences. Because I'm sure as an educator, there are things you see, like you said, you're around these kids a lot and you become a part of these communities. So they feel that they can connect and that you're not so out of touch with them.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know you asked kind of when did I fall in love with teaching. So going through that experience, it wasn't until literally COVID that I started to really fall in love with teaching. Maybe a little prior to that, right? But I would definitely say my third year. So going into my third year, I was able to allocate more time and energy into the craft. My first 2 years, I was kind of split into doing more things than just focusing on teaching, right? I was writing and doing a lot of creative projects. So I wasn't able to devote all of my energy to the craft of teaching. But in my third year, I was able to clear some stuff off of my plate and really focus energy into the craft of teaching. And for me, I think the love came when I was able to make observations. So again, going back to observation skills, I was able to make observations within the system that allow me to then embed what I feel I do well. And that's where the love came. And it's just like anything else. It's like working for a company and feeling like you're not really being utilized as much as you know you can be utilized. But then you see that project comes along and you're like, yo, this is for me. So I created a project for myself. I was noticing a lack of academic achievement and I was seeing the pattern and I was asking myself like, yo, why is it year after year after year, students are not optimizing their potential? What is it? Is it the system? Is it the organization? Is it the way things are set up? And the first thing that I did, and I'm looking at it now, was I just created a chart in regards to instructional accountability that starts with instruction and practice on the teacher side, then student, teacher, student, teacher. So it's kind of like that relationship where if I'm planning a lesson, you know, it's important that students understand the importance of that and then their role in that process. Because a student's job is just as important as a teacher's job, right? So setting that tone is something that I started to do in my third year. And then eventually I just went, wow, like I went stupid crazy in regards to literally creating what I see as a guide and a blueprint and a roadmap for academic success. And it went from just the simple chart to asking questions such as, you know, how can I go about building efficient, effective, sustainable systems that are scalable and add value to the people that I'm looking to serve, in this case, the students. And I just started working things out, figuring out ways to best communicate with parents via talking points when their child doesn't complete an assignment. Transparency in regards to creating comments that I put into the grade book so that students know exactly what they have to do. Like, please attempt this assignment, please complete, please revise, giving students feedback. I'm talking like real rich things that enhance how students view education as well as their role within their respective educational journey. So that's what I've been working on since, again, COVID. You know, I was working from home, so I was in the comfort of my own space, and everything was virtual. So I can actually capture everything. I can take screenshots. I can record lessons. And this is what allowed me to take things to the next level. Because when we look at sports like Kobe, right? Practice, play the game, reflect, look at film. That's how I look at education now. I prepare lesson plans. My game is when I'm teaching, and then after I'm reflecting on the lesson and figuring out what adjustments and moves I need to make to become better the next time. So that's how I look at it. Like, I want to be as good as I possibly can, right? We say teachers get underpaid. I really don't care. I'm still going to perform as if I'm making millions of dollars. That's my approach to the game of education.
We need more teachers and educators like you. And
I think that's a great way to look at it and think about it, because you care about, you care about your time, what you're putting your effort and energy in. I think that matters. Which sometimes people are doing things that they don't care about, so you're wasting time. And I think that it's important for you to mention the fact that you eventually fell in love with it. It wasn't at the beginning, but I'm pretty sure you recognize that this was your purpose. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we may not always fall in love with something at first, people included. But the more time we spend with it, with them, the more we get to learn about something or someone, and we are able to eventually identify the elements that enable us to fall in love. That's how I see it.
Mm. And one of the things you also mentioned in one of your interviews was the fact that there is a small percentage of male teachers. Why do you think that having men, I think you kind of touched on it, well, you did, as teachers matter, but also like Black teachers?
Yeah, it's mentorship, it's acknowledgement, it's seeing someone who looks like us. It's inspiration, it's energy, it's our story, right? Not his story, but our story. And I feel that that's what really enables us. And, if I was a child right now, that would really inspire me to just want to be better. Like when I was younger, I looked up to guys like Deion Sanders, Charles Woodson, Pharrell, who are all people that I respect. And I see something in them that creates a spark in me. Mm-hmm. So that's how I see it. Our presence helps to create a spark in those who are looking at us and those who look like us. So that's why I feel it's important.
Yes. And how has your experience been teaching, of course, Black children and Black boys, the impacts and, just watching?
Yeah, I mean, so my school district is predominantly Latino, believe it or not.
Oh, right? Wow.
So the community I live in is predominantly Latino. But regardless, even in my time in Miami,
I was going to say Haiti, Little Haiti is, I know that from First 48. That's the only reason.
Yeah. So Little Haiti is definitely Haitian, right? Little Haiti. So we're talking about a Black population. Even at Miami Edison Senior High School, there was a significant Latino population as well, which looking at Miami as a city, as well as a county, because there's a Miami-Dade County, and then the city of Miami within Miami-Dade County has a significant Latino population. What I would look at deeper, though, is the community, right? So when we look at the challenges, the struggles, the issues, and from a broader lens, people of color, BIPOC, whatever term we want to use, it can be viewed as, I don't want to say similar because I don't want to discredit experience or struggle. I can't say similar.
Right.
But in regards to the communities that we may share existence in, right? Currently, not historically, but just currently, when we're looking at the current state of certain communities, the impact is from where we are, right, to where we want to be. So whether you're Latino, Black, doesn't matter. Where are you right now? Where do you want to be? What do we need to do to get there? That's how I'm looking at it right now.
Gotcha. I mean, I think because you're coming from, the communities that you serve, that is, I guess that question, had it been, because I do also like to think, I think the experience of Black people are very unique. So it's important for us to most times separate the fact that our experiences are unique. But I guess in this case, because you have that community, a mix of community, then you would say that. So I can see why you say that.
But it's also like when we look at it from a cultural standpoint, right? Black culture and the impact of Black culture on communities of color, Black, Latino, Asian, right? Then that's significant as well, because I'm someone who represents Black culture. So when I'm teaching someone who is Latino, and they admire Black culture from music, hip hop, fashion, everything, then again, that becomes another connection point. So whether I'm in New Brunswick or Newark or Jersey City, Trenton, it's still that commonality when we look at the impact of Black culture, therefore the impact of Black teachers, Black male teachers, and that particular dynamic.
Yeah, I think, and that's true, because I guess that's why representation matters.
Yeah.
So, yes. And you also mentioned before that education is, when it's powerful, you become such a powerful person. And I think I agree, because when you're able to articulate, like you and Philip also talked about, sometimes that you can't communicate because you're not able to articulate. And sometimes people find themselves in situations where they didn't know how to articulate, this is what I'm experiencing now. But then later on down the line, they do learn. And it's like, dang, I wish I would have had those tools then to know. So I want to talk about the things that you're doing in terms of education and learning and changing the way people learn, like you mentioned before. So what's going on?
Yeah, so right now within the classroom, I just wrapped up year 4, heading into year 5. I'm involved in multiple initiatives as it pertains to social justice. Me personally, I'm getting more into economic justice because I feel that is essential. So I'm reading, Black Labor, White Wealth right now by Dr. Claude Anderson, and just really diving into literature to make me a stronger person so I can have even more of an impact on those around me. Specifically, my biggest project, which is something I will take into year 5 and beyond, is what's currently called the Academic Student Success Guide. So that to date is about a 91 deck Google slide, which consists of everything from my educational philosophy to district resources to scheduling, academic roles and responsibilities, instructional setup, grading and performance guidelines, rubrics. Pretty much, you mentioned toolkit, the entire toolkit to allow students as well as parents, provide them with the tools and know-how of what it actually takes to go from maybe being an okay student to being a high achieving student. And I was able to capture my growth as an educator, which I feel is essential as well. And the first marking period back in September, my class average for one of my classes was a 66. And when we closed out the 4th marking period, just, a week ago or so, my class average for that same class was a 92.
Wow.
So I was literally able to apply these practices and principles that I've been working on for over a year and see that to success, and just see how those small steps compiled collectively make a huge, massive change. And one particular highlight I want to mention for educators is pacing. So when we look at education in school, I shared this with my friends. I'm sure you may have experienced it as well. If we are going according to how we are told students should learn, like, oh, this lesson needs to be done at this time, that's not how people learn. We all learn at a different pace. So as an educator, if I'm seeing that my students aren't performing because I'm moving too fast, doesn't it make sense to slow down regardless of what the pacing guide says? Because if I just keep moving fast, no one wins. I don't win as a teacher. My students don't win as students because they're not learning. And there's no meaning that comes from that. So I believe that that's a lot of what I'm seeing when it comes to teaching and education is we are looking at outdated ways of teaching, and we're not really addressing the human element of education and learning. And it's not until we take ownership of that, which is something I decided to do, that we will really start to see the difference. So I would encourage everyone to really reflect and interrogate what we're doing within our craft, even outside of education, because this applies to any system right now, especially considering everything that's going on. It's time to interrogate and question the way things have or have not been working for centuries and figure out better ways to do it.
Yes. And I when I hear that, I think about it takes a lot of you care. And then it also takes a lot of work, I can see, probably from, teachers that these kids are interacting with throughout the day, or say if they move. So how do you, one, make sure that it's ingrained in them? And also, I know you mentioned like the talking to the parents and things like that, because parents differ. So how do you make sure that these students are taking what you're giving them, these foundation principles, onto the next grade level outside of school and wherever they may go?
It becomes a part of culture, right? So for me, culture, and I believe this comes from the former CEO of LinkedIn, Jeff Weiner. He mentioned like culture is a collective behavior and mindset of individuals, right? So if we look at the culture of a community, culture of an organization, et cetera, it's collective mindset and behavior. So how do we build that? I believe we build that through a consistent practice of repetition. And I do that through, number one, documenting, like what do we want to be repeated? So every day when I'm opening up my class in the morning, we call it SEL. Back in the day, it's called homeroom. So every morning, I want to give my students the opportunity to check their emails, check their grades, and make sure that all their assignments are completed and up to date, right? So housekeeping, just like we do as adults, wake up, go through our morning routine, check our emails, do what we got to do, make sure things are up to date. So I really want to embed that practice into my students at a young age. Also accountability. As teachers, sometimes we don't allow ourselves to be corrected. I want to be corrected, right? So I tell my students, if I did not update your grade for an assignment that you completed, please let me know. So now this holds them accountable for looking at their own grades, because now they know that, okay, if I updated an assignment, but I didn't let Mr. Kelley know, that's my job, right? So now I have to look at my grades to make sure that everything's updated. So me being transparent, also letting them know that I make mistakes, holds them accountable for double checking everything they do so that I don't make the mistake. And whatever performance measurement is accurate. So it's a two-way street. It's creating those kinds of systems where we all depend on one another. That's what I've learned in my work this year specifically.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure people who are listening can take something away from that because, like you said, being corrected and accountability, because people are offering programs and they're teaching things and they're saying, okay, we're going to keep it this way. But maybe your students are saying, okay, we would rather you do it this way. So, like you said, stand to be corrected. Love it. So, Aquaus, you mentioned before some of the initiatives that you're working on, and I know you for helping with a few initiatives. I want to talk about your tribe of people, because I'm pretty sure there is some influence or that matters for you to have a good tribe around you. So do you have any mentors, or how did you find them, or your gang of people that you kind of like depend on to talk about certain things?
Yeah, when it comes to the tribe, usually it's based around the energy that I put out there. So I'm a big believer in doing the work first and then attracting the tribe, because there's a lot of superficial, I would say surface level networking, right?
Yeah.
That happens. Like there are those who network, but aren't really working on anything. So you network, you meet people, but when it's time to really build and have a deep conversation, there's not much to talk about because nothing's being brought to the table. So I believe in doing the work first, whether we're a writer or an artist, whatever it is. Like when we commit to the craft, that is what we can start speaking about. And that's what can start speaking for us. And then through that, that's how we can build our tribe. For example, I don't write as often, but I'm still a writer. That's how I communicate my ideas and express my thoughts, as well as speaking. So just like we met one another, like literally we met, I had a camera in my hands. I was doing work, right? And that's how we built from there. If I wasn't doing anything, then I doubt we would have had the conversations that we had to follow. But I was a writer at the time, and I was shooting to help with the columns and articles that I was writing. So, I mean, me and you, prime example. Travis Weeks, Franz, Natalia, Driven Society, shout out to them. We all work closely with one another. And my introduction into their work was through listening. So we spoke about listening as a skill earlier. As an educator, I feel it's essential. Sometimes I'll listen to podcasts, right? Black to Business, Driven Society, etc. And that's how I came across their work. So I'm like, yo, they're doing some dope stuff. I remember I did a quick write-up on Instagram, and Franz reached out. He's like, yo, this is a dope write-up. Let's link, come out to an event. And from there, I started writing for them and built that connection. And that's how I continued to build with them. And that was in 2017. To this day, we continue to work collectively. So that's literally how I go about building tribe. It starts with producing meaningful work. And then through that, it's finding ways to connect with people who are also putting out meaningful work, and you build those bridges. And next thing you know, you have a good tribe of people who are doing meaningful, significant things in the world.
Yes. And how do you maintain those relationships? Any advice for people who are listening?
Yeah, the maintenance of those relationships, I would say, is continuing to support their work. So when you have events, you let me know. I come through, brunches, lunches. What we're doing now, that's probably the best way to maintain and better yet, sustain those relationships, is to really support the work that they are doing. So again, that's why it goes back to the work, because again, I'm sure there are people that we would love to support, but they're not really doing anything yet, right? Even myself, like when most people ask, how can they support me? Like, it's not like I put out a book or I'm doing events or things like that. I'm doing a lot of events and partnerships, but in terms of my name on everything, Like I've yet to throw a big event, or I've yet to put out any particular product. But because I've been building the way I've been building, when I do that, I have the call log, right? I have the receipts essentially that I can reach out to you. I can reach out to Trav. I can reach out to Darius and say, yo, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm putting out. Like, I need some support, right?
Right.
And I'm sure that will happen. So it's really about supporting others while we build relationship equity and capital and social equity and capital, and things will come around full circle. It's only a matter of time.
Yes. Yes, yes. And you said something earlier about like, you know, the connections. And I think it's great that you mentioned the genuine connections, because I'll say I'm not the most, people assume I'm very like social, but I'm not. But I do know that like you, it's like those genuine connections. Most of the time, it's like I'm always going to be thinking of these people. I'm always going to be thinking, how can I help, or how can we continue to work together? Because I do believe in nurturing that relationship. So I think it's like, you don't always have to have be around a lot of people, but those connections are genuine that you have. So, yeah, that's what I say.
Yeah, I want to speak to that for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
well, because I thought it's important, because I myself am an introvert, right?
Yes.
I prefer staying in. I prefer studying and reading. I prefer being in isolation. I'll be honest. Like, I work well in isolation. I don't have the need. I never feel the need to be around people. The only time I'm around people is when it's tied to something of purpose, like a birthday party or an event or some place that I need to be. Like, my presence has to be felt there, or I'm there to support someone. And we don't have to be social to feel like we have to know the entire world, right? It's okay to feel comfortable in isolation and do what we love to do while we build whatever we're building. I think self-awareness and belief and trust in ourselves and our ability to do amazing things is essential. Like, anyone listening right now, don't get caught up in the hype. Don't get caught up in the overnight success. I've been grinding for over a decade, and I don't even feel I've achieved a fraction of what I'm capable of achieving. However, because I really enjoy doing what I'm doing, and I enjoy the process of learning each step along the way, that's what has sustained me for over a decade. And that's what will continue to sustain me. Because if I was to leave this planet tomorrow, I still feel as though I left the world in a better place than it was prior to my gift of being born and being on this planet. So wherever we traverse, wherever we end up, as long as we can just think about, how am I making this room, this space, those around me, just a little bit more insightful, more aware, more mindful, more thoughtful, whatever it is, we've done our job. So that's how I look at it.
Yes. And like you all mentioned, you know, some of these things that like you're doing, it requires deep work, and deep work requires, you know, being with self and isolation sometimes to be creative. So, yeah, I could certainly not do what I'm doing for Black to Business if I was up in people's faces all day. I'm like, I would be exhausted.
Yes.
So even though I have people that help me, but still, no.
Yo, I got tired just listening to you say that. That's why I was laughing. Like, yo, just listening to that is tiring. Being up in people's faces is tiring.
Oh, so, yes. So, what does it mean, Aquaus, for you to be a Black man leading?
So a Black man leading for me is to lead by example, right? Showing examples along the way, sharing as much as I can. That's why I like to document a lot, because in the conversations I have, I like to point people in a very, very specific direction. So if we're talking about teaching, here you go, right? Here's what you could use for that. Here's what I've done. Here's how it's worked for me. Documenting videos and storytelling. And it's really thinking ahead, right? So it's projecting ahead and looking at a world that we would like to see, and it's working towards creating that world that we envision in our head, and enlisting people in that vision as well. And all of that for me comes through, again, action and leading by example.
Yes. And I know you mentioned earlier some of the things. Right now, you haven't built anything to say certain things that people can support, but how can people connect with you and just support you in that way? Or if you have anything other than that you would like them to support?
Yeah, so on a professional tip, I really like connecting on LinkedIn, right? So you can find me on LinkedIn, first name Aquaus, Aquaus, last name Kelley, Kelley. I keep my LinkedIn updated. I post a lot of work on LinkedIn. So that's great for connecting on a professional tip. In regards to social, definitely IG at Aquaus, Aquaus, Twitter, same thing, Aquaus. I have a YouTube channel as well at Aquaus, Aquaus. And recently I started a digital diary. So I would say this is the closest thing to my heart right now. So for those of you who enjoy podcasts or enjoy insight information from the perspective of those who are growing and moving forward in their respective journey, last May, I believe I launched Love and Ambition, a digital diary. And essentially this consists of my day-to-day views. It's literally a digital diary. So anything that's top of mind, close to my heart when it comes to education, branding, me interacting with the student, whatever it is, love, whatever it is, relationships, that's where I put my thoughts out. So in 10, 15 years to come, I'm hoping that people look at that particular platform as an entry into my life and how I went about building whatever I will have in 10, 15 years to come. So I think it's a pretty cool project for me. I always see it as kind of me having access to someone like a Pharrell or Troy Carter and seeing how they built Star Trek or Atom Factory and their days working with Khalees or Lady Gaga. So, again, that goes back to leadership and just having the gumption and confidence to want to start at the ground level to see how things unfold in the future. So Love and Ambition, a digital diary, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast.
Love it. That's what I was going to say, is that the confidence and the gumption, because a lot of people would not have the courage to do that and put themselves out there like that. So leading by example, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, Aquaus, this has been so amazing. And I really thank you for being the host, but also being involved. Next year, we're going to do it even better. So I'm excited to hear what people think about the series. But I really appreciate you lending your time to Blacks in Business and Black Men Who Lead. Absolutely, Monique. Again, thank you for everything you have done and continue to do for the Black community. You have been way ahead of the curve when we talk about Black business, Black empowerment, Black excellence, Black everything.
And
thank you.
I think I've shared this before, and I'm sure I'll share it again, but continue doing what you do. We need you. We love you. We admire you. So keep doing what you do, right?
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I will. Thank you, Aquaus.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Such an enlightening conversation. As business owners, you never stop learning. And through this conversation, it really brought home how we must continue to be flexible and the power of building efficient and scalable systems that add value to those we serve. This is your assigned purpose. Thank you so much for listening, and know that what you are doing is so necessary. So keep going. Also, to get resources mentioned in this episode, visit blacktobusiness.com/52. And if you haven't already, check out our curated list of 31 Black men who lead in partnership with the Creative Brother at blacktobusiness.com/Black men who lead. It would mean so much to us if you could let us know on Apple Podcasts with a review how you enjoyed this series. Until next time.